Welcome back to yet another episode of the Commercial Leader Podcast. My name is Bram LeGroux, and for you sales directors, here's the topic for you. Buyer indecision. Think about the deal sitting on your board right now that's been stuck in a late stage the longest. Not the one you lost, because that one's easy. You know what happened. I mean the one that's still technically alive. Every time you check in, you get a "we're close" and "I just need to align internally," or "you should have an answer soon." And it just doesn't move. Every sales director hearing this has at least one of those on their board right now. And if you go looking for help with it, I know a lot of you have, because buyer indecision is one of the most searched problems among sales leaders today. You'll find page after page of the same advice. Things like tighten your qualification, build more urgency, get a mutual action plan signed, ladder up to the economic buyer. They're all useful, but none of it explains why a prospect who told you in writing that your solution is exactly what they need still can't bring themselves to sign. That's what we're unpacking today. Not process. We're going underneath the process into the actual psychology of the humans sitting in that buying committee. Because indecision isn't your prospect being difficult, and it isn't your rep being lazy. 9 times out of 10, it's predictable, it's explainable, and this is the part that actually matters most for you as a leader, it's preventable. The 2 P's, as I always reference. Now, a quick word on where this is coming from for anyone new to the show. 6 years as a sales manager, 16 years as a management consultant, I've been in the room with commercial teams across 25 countries. I hold a master's in psychology and a postgrad in training and development behind that. So this isn't just pattern matching from war stories. And the methodology that I built out of all of it, which is called communication mastery, is what I license to corporate clients as consulting, training, coaching, and soon to be technology. Most sales training treats psychology as a garnish, a slight on building rapport, or a throwaway line about reading the room, and then straight back into stage gates and forecast categories. I want to flip that today. Buyer indecision, longer deal cycles, risk aversion, multiple decision makers pulling in different directions, every one of those shows up in the data as a process problem. I don't think it is one. I think it's a psychology problem wearing a process costume. So today we're leading with the psychology and letting the process follow it, which, not coincidentally, is exactly how we approach it inside communication mastery. Now, the model that I use with clients and the one I want you walking away with today, I call it the brain elevator, not to be confused with the elevator pitch. Now, picture your prospect's brain as a building with 3 floors, and your job, every single interaction, is to get them into the elevator and moving upward. You cannot skip a floor. You cannot talk your way to the top floor while the ground floor is still on alert. And most sales training, if it touches psychology at all, drops you straight into floor 3 and wonders why the doors won't open. Floor 1 is the crocodile brain. The oldest, fastest part of the system, the one that isn't interested in your value proposition at all. It doesn't want to hear about your pricing. It doesn't want to hear why you guys are the best to deal with. Its only job is threat detection. Is this safe? Is this person trying to take something away from me? And it is spectacularly easy to spook. One pushy line like, "So we're good to move forward on this today?" Or one whiff of a salesperson trying to close me, and the crocodile brain slams the doors shut. That's not your prospect being difficult. That's just fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Flight looks like pushback and objections that seem to come from nowhere. Flight looks like the meeting that mysteriously got rescheduled twice. Freeze looks like the silence that you can't read. And fawn, this one gets missed constantly, looks like an enthusiastic agreement, warm nodding, things like, "This looks great, I'll get back to you," and then nothing happens. All four are the same elevator, stuck on the same floor. The way you get the doors to open on floor 1 isn't a better pitch. It's removing perceived threat. No pressure, no artificial urgency, no just checking in. That's actually a subtle push. You behave in a way that signals, I'm not here to take something away from you. I understand you, you're safe. Only once that's generally landed does the elevator move up. Floor 2 now is the limbic system, the emotional floor. This is where things like trust, rapport, and goodwill either get built or get quietly torched. The prospect no longer feels physically threatened, but there's a different risk now, the risk that you behave in a way that voids the goodwill that you've built. Acting pushy is the classic one. So is misreading their pace, talking over their hesitation, or forcing a decision before they're emotionally ready to give you one. Get any of that wrong, and the elevator doesn't crash back to the basement. It just gets stuck on floor 2 indefinitely. That's most of your "he went quiet," and "she keeps pushing the timeline" deals. Not lost, just stuck. The way through floor 2 is behaving in a way that's generally comfortable for the specific person in front of you, which is a very different thing for a fast-talking extrovert than it is for a cautious, detail-driven introvert. More on exactly how in a moment, because this is where most of the real leverage in this episode sits. Floor 3 is the neocortex, the executive center of the brain. Rational evaluation, weighing options, actually making an investment decision. This is the floor every sales process is designed for. Value propositions, ROI calculators, comparison matrices, all floor 3 level stuff. Here's the problem. None of them work if the elevator never got there. You can hand someone the most brilliant ROI case in the world, and if their crocodile brain or their limbic system is still unsettled, they will nod, say it looks compelling, and still not decide. Not because the logic failed, because the logic never got delivered to the floor that was open to receiving it. The whole point of the brain elevator is that you work with how the brain actually functions, not against it. You don't get to reason someone out of the floor 1 threat response. You don't get to logic your way past the floor 2 trust rupture. The elevator only goes up in order, and most of the buyer indecision your reps are fighting is actually an elevator stuck on either floor 1 or floor 2, being pitched to as if it's already ready on floor 3. So here's the next question, and it's the one that actually differentiates this from generic sales psychology. Different people get stuck for different reasons, and different people need a different key to get the doors open. That's exactly where stakeholder profiling comes in. And it's the piece almost nobody covers when they talk about buyer indecision. Everyone's busy optimizing the process while the actual humans inside it are being handled authentically. Inside communication mastery, however, before we touch a sales process, we build a stakeholder map. Every decision maker and influencer gets profiled, primarily on the disc style because it's fast, it's practical, and it tells you exactly what comfortable looks like for that specific person. For example, a high D, dominant, fast, wants the bottom line. They read patience as weakness and long explanation as wasted time. So give them control, be brief, lead with the outcome, and their elevator moves up quickly. A high I, which is more about warm and storage and relationship first, reads a purely transactional approach as cold. And that coldness itself can read as a threat. Build the relationship first, involve them, and they'll carry you up. A high S, which is all about steadiness, conflict averse, and values being heard, is the one that trips up the most salespeople. And we'll come back to this one in a second with a real example because it's the profile most likely to produce exactly the kind of indecision that's actually just mismanaged pace. A high C, being analytical, wants things in writing, and is allergic to being pushed, needs data, not charm, and needs time before deciding. It isn't optional. It's the price of entry. So get the profile wrong, or worse, don't profile at all and just run everyone through your default sales process, and you will reliably reset someone's elevator back down the floor without ever knowing you did. That's not a character flaw in your rep. It's the single most predictable, most preventable cause of the stalled deal that you were thinking about at the start of this episode. Now, here's the part that makes buyer indecision specifically brutal in B2B, and it's rarely named out loud. You're not managing one elevator. You're managing 4, 5, sometimes 8 of them simultaneously, and they're not all on the same floor at the same time. Your champion might already be on floor 3, ready to buy. Your economic buyer, however, might be still sitting on floor 1 because nobody's actually spoken to them directly, and their only information is a secondhand summary from someone else. Your technical evaluator might be parked on floor 2, quietly unimpressed by how your team handled a demo question 3 weeks earlier, and nobody's noticed because they haven't said anything. They've just gone a little quieter in every call since. This is where risk aversion actually comes from, by the way. Not from the individual being naturally cautious, but from the very real professional risk of recommending a decision that then goes wrong. That risk calculation happens on floor 2 and 3 both. Floor 2 asks, will I look foolish or lose standing if I back this? And floor 3 asks, does the logic actually hold up? A single red running a single pace and a single style across a whole committee will reliably move some of those people up and reliably stall others. And the deal reads as stuck when really it's split. 3 floors ahead here, 1 floor behind there, and nobody's building for the slowest elevator in the room. That's the whole argument for profiling every stakeholder individually, not just the champion. The deal moves at the pace of whoever's furthest behind, not whoever's furthest ahead. Let me make this concrete, because this is exactly the pattern I see over and over. Jan is a BDM at a SaaS company, and he came to me frustrated. One particular prospect had been in progress for over a year and a half, close to 2 years. Long cycle, endless positive signals, zero decision. Jan's read on this, understandably, was that the prospect was simply indecisive. We built a stakeholder map together. His champion turned out to be a textbook high S. Conflict shy, an indirect communicator, smiling, nodding, warm in every meeting, and consistently holding off anything resembling a commitment. And here's the read I gave Jan that changed everything. That pleasant, agreeable poker face wasn't hiding reluctance about the product. It was a people-pleasing instinct and a deep discomfort with conflict doing exactly what it's designed to do. Avoid saying anything that might create friction, including the friction of no, or even a friction of a firm yes, before they felt fully ready. Jan, like a lot of salespeople, is a high I. He's impatient, fast-paced, enthusiastic. Left to his natural, he was moving at a pace that felt completely normal to him and landed on this particular prospect as rushed. Not aggressive, nothing dramatic, just fast enough relative to a high S's need for space and certainty to read as pressure. And pressure is exactly what keeps floor 2's doors from opening. So we changed 2 things here. First, Jan's expectations. He needed to genuinely accept that this relationship was going to move at the prospect's pace, not his own, and stop quietly measuring it against his usual time frame. Second, his language. Signaling patience, collaboration, and acceptance explicitly, rather than assuming warmth would be inferred. Small things like give more space after a question instead of filling silence, checking in less like a countdown and more like genuine interest, and explicitly telling the prospect there was no rush on their end. As Jan got visibly more comfortable operating at this other person's pace, the prospect reciprocated. Within a few weeks, after more than a year and a half of exactly this kind of quiet, well-mannered stall, they decided in Jan's favor. Nothing about the product changed. Nothing about the price changed. What changed was the elevator, which had been stuck on floor 2 for 18 months, was finally allowed to move because the one thing keeping the doors shut, a pace being mismatched that nobody had named, got identified and corrected. That's not an unusual story. That's the story with different names and different disc letters behind an enormous number of the indecisive deals sitting on your board right now. So here's what I actually want you to do with this starting Monday. Stop treating buyer indecision as a process failure to be solved with more urgency, more touch points, more pressure on the timeline, or discounts. Pressure is a floor 1 and floor 2 trigger. Apply it to a stuck elevator and you don't speed it up at all. You send it back to the ground floor instead. Ask 3 questions about every stall deal on your board. 1. Which floor is each key stakeholder actually on? Safety, trust, or genuinely evaluating? 2. Then, have we profiled them individually? Or are we running one rep's natural style across every person in that buying committee? 3. Then, is our pace matched to the slowest elevator in the room, or only to the one that's easiest to talk to? The 2 P's keep coming back on this show, which is predictable and preventable. Buyer indecision isn't random, and it isn't a character flaw in your prospect. It's a brain doing exactly what brains are built to do, responding to a pace and a style it wasn't given the chance to feel comfortable with. So work with the flow instead of against it, and what looks like an 18-month stall can move suddenly in weeks. That's exactly the work I do with commercial teams through communication and mastery, building the stakeholder profiling and the psychological read into how your sales reps actually run their deals. So you're engaging every decision maker deliberately instead of running one pace across all of them and hoping that it will work. If you got deals on your board that sound exactly like Jan's, or a team that's applying urgency to prospects who need more patience, let's talk. Book a free discovery call, links in the show notes below, and we'll look at exactly where buyer indecision might be quietly costing you deals and how much of it is more preventable than it currently feels. See you next time. My name is Brian.